we take a look at this, which is my favorite small sword. I mentioned in a previous video how this was the first small sword I got. That is not completely true in the sense that I did already own a few like more military spadroony small swords, let's say. Mostly Prussian, I think, and also the cut steel hilted one I showed in a previous video. However, this is the first small sword, let's say, that made me really appreciate the small sword as a weapon more than as a part of a uniform, perhaps, or part of status symbol, like part of just the general attire of a gentleman. So this sword is fairly long, and in fact, depending on what your definition of it is, it could easily fall in the category of a transitional rapier, which I actually tend to agree with. Like, I do consider this, for me, a transitional rapier. But these are just kind of mental categorizations. It's not like there's no pedigree for a sword to be a transitional rapier. However, we've already seen in the measuring video the size and everything of it. I just wanted to focus in this video a little more on the aesthetics of it, on like the blade itself and everything. So let's dive right into it and check out this transitional rapier / small sword, but my favorite one. This is a sword I'm really happy to show, as I keep saying, I really, really like it. It feels great in the hand. It is tip heavy, as I mentioned in other videos, but I don't see that as a defect. I find instead that it aligns my hand really comfortably, in a very comfortable position, almost naturally. So, but of course, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Just because it feels good in my hand, it doesn't mean it's a like objectively good trait for sword. However, and here maybe we might actually start with the blade and actually the tip of the blade. This blade heaviness maybe translates into this being more of a cutter compared to other swords, at least. It's obviously still a thruster as well, but perhaps the fact that it has that mass towards the tip and that like weight bringing it down would help actually deliver some pretty serious cuts, but I wonder. In terms of sharpness, this one is sharp, or at least it was. This is at the point where I'm not too comfortable running my finger along it, at least not everywhere on the blade. Some points are definitely not sharp, but this sword is giving me the vibes that I don't want to be too careless with it, because some spots of it may still be sharp enough to kind of cut. Now, would it be a good cutter? That's a good question, because this diamond section obviously means that it has a primary bevel that's rather pronounced. So I don't know how that translates in terms of, you can see it here as well, how that translates in terms of cutting ability, but I do think that this sword would have been able to cut at some point. The blade is quite simple, actually. So no maker's marks, no decoration or anything. It's a pure diamond section, not hollow ground by any means. This is just a diamond section. And the mid-rib here, the ridge, continues essentially up to the tip. You can see it tapers out maybe 0.5 centimeter from the tip. The tip is pointy, so this could still stab today, and without requiring too much strength. Like if I just, you know, if I carelessly handled it and it fell on my toe or something, this would probably go through. Of course, that midrib confers a certain amount of stiffness to the blade, although given its length, it does bend somewhere. So I would say that the bendiest spot is somewhere here. So at the 4th, 5th of the blade, let's say, is where the whole structure seems to give a little more compared to the rest of the sword. As for the forte area, it's stiff as a bone. It does not flex much, if at all. For detailed measurements, of course, go check the video where we kind of looked at the ratio of thickness to width of the blade, and you'll see that it stays quite beefy, at least to the midpoint of the blade. Now, coming to the hilt. I really love this hilt because it's a perfect example of the early small sword / transitional rapier. And it's still fairly complete, except for the lack of the wire wrapping. So you'll see the shell here has this ridge around it, like this is the frame of the shell. And then you have these plates that are inserted within the shell. You can actually feel one of them is slightly loose. Not enough that it's dangerous or that it might pop off, but I still need to be a little careful touching it. It's nicely decorated, but not richly, if that makes sense. So it feels to me like this is a sword of for someone who wanted it decorated, had the means for some kind of decoration, but this is not like a fancy gentleman's sword. This, I have the feeling, is a sword that's a little more leaning towards munitions grade, perhaps. So you can see some kind of decoration with piercing and open work, but I'm having some trouble understanding what, if anything, it may represent. It's rather crude as far as decoration goes. You'll see the drill holes here are just rectangular little holes. It's as if they didn't really finish, you know, they could have pierced the hilt in a way more elaborate way. And just for a comparison, completely different metal, of course, and everything, but take a look at the piercing on this hilt. It's still simple, it's not, but yeah, you can see they went through the effort of kind of removing metal all around these little branches. Whereas if you look at this one, it seems like they just drilled the holes, then kind of maybe extended them to be a little bit rectangular and didn't do much else. So I wonder if it was an unfinished job or simply a cheap job. What you'll also see is decoration on the edges here of the frame. You'll see, if I can get it in focus, you'll see these little balls, this little pearl kind of pattern here, and then you have like leaves, I think, or basically a bit of a herringbone pattern, and you'll see similar lines decorated also at the center of the valves. You'll also see this little metal block that basically fixes the blade in place, acts as a kind of, it's peened over, if that makes sense. So it's a little lip of metal that's bent over these shells to keep everything, to keep the whole assembly in place, essentially. This is also a feature that is fairly common on some of the earlier small swords. And as we move to the quillin block, again, we have a crude but decorated piece of metal. So someone wasn't as devoid of artistic taste, let's say, as possible. So it wasn't a complete void of art, but also definitely not too concerned with making it look amazing. So the quillin block is rather big. You'll see it's the size of my thumb, more or less. And the only decoration is this little notch pattern. So it's kind of, it looks like it's spiraling down in a sense. It's a diagonal set of lines. And these lines are made by these little punch marks in the metal. The rings are definitely comfortable. You can fit your finger without any issue. However, the rough edge, not rough, but the kind of sharp edge on the knuckle guard, it's not bothersome, but they could have rounded it, definitely. Again, I think a lot of elements in this sword, I think this relates a lot to Todd Cutler's videos, or Todd Workshop's video, when he talks about medieval swords being made like you were paid by amount produced rather than by the sword as a object of art. So I think here we're seeing a good example of this as well. Decoration is quick, it's a bit sloppy. It's not done to be the best thing possible. It's done to deliver whatever had been requested or was the design. Moving to the quillins, these are a little bit short. They still pop out of the guard, but this is also because the guard kind of moves inwards here. So they're not like long quillins, but they're long enough to be real quillins, let's say. They bend in two directions, so both slightly downwards and upwards, but also, I don't know if that comes through, yeah, but also to the side. So they have this kind of horizontal S bend to it. It's very slight, but it's there. Overall, comfortable but a little crude and utilitarian for sure. You can even see it here. Look at this little line. It's just kind of cut into the metal without really much. You can see it here as well. They just kind of, okay, scored the metal and then didn't really worry about it too much. But I find that very lovely. And also another interesting thing about this sword is how the finger rings here grip onto the shell guard, so they actually kind of overlap it here and hold it in place together with this little lip. I think that's a nice little detail to notice. Now, we can look at the grip. There's not much to say in the sense that it's wood. It's dark black wood. I'm not sure. It must have been painted though, because you can see, I think, a little bit of lighter brown in there. So I've seen a lot of them like this. A lot of these older swords, when they're missing the wire, have this black wooden grip. I don't know. Was it the way it was designed? I don't see any markings here of, I mean, it's possible. You can see this little line. There's maybe a little line here, but I would expect to see way more horizontal markings if it had been wrapped in wire. So this, for example, is the wood of the tiny Walloon hilt sword I showed in some other videos, and you can actually see the grooves here of the original wire fairly deeply and regularly impressed onto the wood. We don't see that here. So whether this was covered in maybe leather first and then wire wrapping, or whether the wire wrapping was just very delicate, but given the sword, I don't think it would be the case, or whether it was just built without the wire wrapping, I don't know. It does feel very comfortable even just with the wood. As for the pommel, I find this rather interesting because much as the whole blade is, or sword is rather crude, I would say, the pommel instead seems to be where they focused some more attention. So you'll see that this stuff is just dirt and oil that I should have probably cleaned it beforehand. But all of these holes are open work. And unlike what we saw on the guard here, the open work here seems like they put a little more effort into creating like this leaf shape or these rounded shapes. Still, it's not enough to be able to make out the design. I still think it's some kind of abstract foliage or something, but they didn't put enough effort to be able to make out what it is. However, you even see this lovely fluting all along the pommel. And you do see that these circular patterns that kind of run around the pommel here are done a little more carefully than the rest of the sword. So who knows? Maybe they bought the pommel from someone else. This is definitely not unheard of. And maybe this is just different suppliers pre-assembly. Or maybe someone just put more care in the pommel. I doubt this is a composite though. I do not see any later hammer marks or anything. There's no sign of tampering. You could say that the peen here of the tang is a little shinier than the rest of the pommel, but it's, I don't know, it's really, it seems too regular and well done to be a later like fix or something like that. So I kind of go with the assumption that this blade or this sword is not a composite and is just the way it was as it was made. I hope you enjoyed it. I really like it a lot. And yeah, and I hope I'll see you soon in another sword video. Bye.